right, Jeff.
This is it moment right there.
This is the it moment. We're going to get started. And guess what? It is live. We're actually going on. No, I'm just kidding. We can edit anything out.
Hello, 4 people on YouTube.
Yeah. Everybody that's watching this. So, but the one thing is about Game of Thrones that is going to be the crazy... Ruth, can you stop dropping your cell phone? The crazy thing that's going to just blow your mind is how bad they ruined the last season.
But everybody's told me that, so I think it's going to be better for me because I have such low expectations.
Actually, it basically what happens is you realize the way that they wrote the story is it kept going, it kept going, it kept going. And they probably needed 3 more seasons to really have it play out, but they were done. So they tried to put everything into one season.
Well, also they couldn't. It cost them so much money to keep making it. I mean, they had to.
No.
I heard like the last one was like $15 million an episode or something last season. That's insane.
No, but HBO told them, whatever you want, we'll just keep making them. Because you got to think how many people tuned in. I think it was 1 billion people tuned in to watch it.
It wasn't 1 billion people.
No.
I mean, that's like that's like 10 times the Super Bowl or 4 times the Super Bowl or something.
It was something ridiculous amount of people were watching that show.
Do you know something else? Hey, on ridiculousness. Yeah. So I went to last night was like the open house, whatever, for elementary school, and I met the kids up at EJ Willis, whatever they do in trivia night, which I've never been trivia night before, but I guess they made it like school-friendly trivia night at a bar. And so like some of the questions were like, who is the honey-loving hero of the 100-acre wood, right? Or who is, Mickey's dog? It was those kind of trivia. And then you had regular trivia questions like what, who's the, I don't know, like. We had a Kurt Warner football question. They had questions about like, one of them was like, is Tiger Woods and P. Diddy's net worth, first of all, who's higher?
Okay.
Second of all, is it above or below $1 billion? Tiger Woods, P. Diddy, right? Or Sean Diddy Combs or whatever.
So together are they above?
So together are they above $1 billion?
Okay.
And which one of them is worth more individually? So I got this.
Oh, don't hit the desk.
I got this
all the time because then it'll.
Oh, sorry. I got this right, but by the skin of my teeth because I thought they were. Yeah, I just guessed. Take a guess. P. Diddy. So
who's that?
Sean Puff Daddy Combs from way back in the day, and he just keeps changing his name. Is that what he's called now? I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
We figure you're young.
Yeah. Aren't you hip? Anyway, but he does, he's a music producer, he does performances, right? But then his big thing has been like shoes and clothing line, right?
Okay.
But still, or Tiger Woods.
All right.
Now, so who do you think's worth more?
I would say Tiger Woods.
Okay.
That would be my guess.
Nope.
Okay, so I'm wrong on that. And are they both worth?
How much do you think Tiger Woods is worth? This is according to Forbes 200 list or 400 list or whatever, like rich people.
Personally, 200 million.
That's what I thought. I thought Tiger's worth 200, 250 because I figured he spends a lot of his money and he gave half of it away to his wife in the divorce, right?
Yeah.
800 million.
800 million.
His career earnings, because it's crazy the PGA stuff is like apparently like they'll do almost like exhibit events like in Saudi Arabia or Japan or something where the purses are like 10 million or parents' fees are 8 million or whatever. So his career earnings so far are 1.5 billion between winnings, endorsements, all that.
So he probably did really well in his divorce then.
I think she got like 200 million at the time. I mean, she got a ton of money, I think. But they probably did pretty enough. But I think she got 200 million.
Do you think that's kind of ridiculous?
I mean, yeah. We can't. I don't know if we can get into that on this podcast, but a little bit. Yeah. But he's an a-hole. So
yeah, but no, I want your opinion about this. So you have a professional athlete who is exceptional at his ability, and then he marries somebody, and they get married and they build a wealth. Let's say it's $30 million. That the spouse should get half of that. Do you think that's ridiculous?
The politically correct answer is no. But yes, I do see. I think it depends, right? You've been married 30 years and you support him. And did you like sleep in the van while he was trying to make the tour? And like, where were you on that train, right?
But I mean,
but if you came in and the guy's already a multi-million dollar athlete and he could be married to anybody and stay a multi-million, that's kind of a different thing, right?
Yeah. Well, it's hard for me to like conceptualize that like, how rare it is to make that much money.
Well, okay, but like the lady, the not eBay, Amazon.
Amazon,
I mean,
sure.
like I think she should have got what she got because she was there when it was all risk, all debt. Her bankruptcy was aligned just
Sorry.
like his.
I make a difference. Let me go through the difference. So if you're a professional athlete, it's you.
Right.
It's who you are that makes the money. It's
Right.
like a doctor. A doctor is who he makes money. When you own a company and the company becomes worth something, that's different. That's an asset that you guys have that appreciates.
Well, right. But in the beginning, to start a company before it's a public company, he might have had to personally guarantee loans as a married person, and she had to co-sign on the dotted line
That's
too.
true.
She had to take the same risk.
That's true. That
Right.
Very well
So
could.
put it this way: if it had been Amazon had been Netscape or
Yeah.
something that failed, or Enron, she'd be splitting half the debts, right? Not half the.
Well, I don't think you should split
Or
half the
or
debts
you would just file bankruptcy. But you get my point.
Yeah.
There was risk there. I think that's a much more equitable split than.
I just have a problem with like someone that's exceptional in their ability, and then someone comes in.
But there's a
marries them.
lifestyle that has to be maintained. Here's my point. My point is, how is P-Diddy worth more than Tiger Woods?
So how much is he worth?
$850 million.
Well, I mean,
He's almost $1 billion based on shoes
yeah,
and
but
clothing.
that's like Kardashian chick. She's worth over $1 billion, right?
Well, I don't even start on that. It just makes me throw up in my mouth.
Yeah. So if you own product lines, that makes sense because it just goes through the roof if you get the right markets. All right. So really, I brought you here not to talk about Games of Thrones or any of this kind of stuff, but you are a financial advisor, and you have helped a lot of people in financial situations, and we are going through a crazy time
Yeah.
in the financial markets. Now, you mentioned something to me, and I want you to talk about this, and that is basically we're making it up as it goes. I want you to go with that thought of after 2009, basically 2008, 2009.
Right.
We entered a new era, and we don't really know what's happening.
Sure. So finance is a strange thing. I mean, finance is sort of like finance is a lot like our diets, right? Or a bad habit. Like you can make a bad decision daily that has a cumulative effect, but seems innocuous. I mean, I can have a double cheeseburger today, and I can have a double cheeseburger tomorrow, and I don't really pay any price for that until one day, like you have a heart attack and fall over.
Yeah.
Right. Or some, that's an oversimplification. But my point is, it's not necessarily that obvious. Oh, I'm just indulging here, indulging there. Well, with the financial crisis, when that happened on the scale that it happened, and they started, it's not as simple as quote unquote printing money, but the quantitative easing programs and the cutting rates. Not only did we cut rates, but Europe cut rates, Japan cut rates. I mean, everybody kind of followed the same prescription to try to ease the pain and get us through the crisis.
Kick the bucket down the road.
Well, right. So, it's quite a complex thing, and I certainly don't have a handle on all of it by any means. I mean,
Well, does anybody?
No.
That's the big question because people get on and talk like they know what they're talking about, but
nobody really does.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening is we artificially, when I say we, I mean the central banks of the major world economies, in effect, colluded to artificially manipulate market rates of interest, and that's about one of the most boring sentences any human being can utter. What does that mean, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is once you create an artificial environment for something, everything else reacts accordingly. And now you have this situation where, much like like a functional alcoholic, right? A functional alcoholic does not experience symptoms until they stop drinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That's when they get the shakes. That's when so you get to a point as an alcoholic where you might even go. I mean, potentially an alcoholic. I'm not one, thankfully. But if you, maybe. But for the people that
I'm gonna let you.
I don't want. I'm not trying to make light of it, but I'm simply saying that my understanding from people I've talked to about this is many people get to a point of, okay, well, I'm not to the point where I'm, drunk all of the time beyond capacity. But I am absolutely an alcoholic, and drinking is a morning, noon, night kind of a thing.
So in the financial world.
But if I were to stop drinking, I can't maintain the facade of performance at my job and performance at home and everything else because the overwhelming, the reality of the withdrawal isn't manageable.
And that's basically the central banks by decreasing interest rates.
So by decreasing interest rates, are less. And another good example is, do you remember when we were growing up as kids? Maybe even as in college. I don't know. My college was a little bit before your college, but I remember it was like 10 cents a minute, nights and weekends free. Then it was 7 cents a minute. Then it was 5. I mean, people competed on long distance price.
Yeah.
Right. You remember this?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. You and I tomorrow could invent a telecom network and call it the 1 cent a minute. We're only going to charge you 1 cent a minute, and it's only on Monday nights. Yeah. And we would get 0 subscribers because from the perspective of everybody else now, long distance is free.
Yeah.
We don't pay. We pay for service, but we don't pay for long distance.
Yeah.
At least on our cell phones.
You are, but you don't perceive that.
You don't perceive it, and it's not on a per minute. It's a different model now.
Yes.
Right. So if you were to try to charge that, or maybe another way, what was your first mortgage rate? Do you remember?
Let's see. It was close. It was a commercial deal, so it was close to 7%.
Okay, mine was 8.5 because I was self-employed and it was subprime.
And you were, it was for your home.
Yep, for my home.
Man, you must have bad credit.
It was
I'm just kidding with you, man.
Moderately bad.
Yeah, just mess with you.
8.5. Or I should be fair. I think 8.5 was the secondary loan, but still.
Yeah.
Right.
I understand.
Well. Now, if you told anybody that their mortgage would be 8.5%, they would just look at you like you just told them that orange plus kumquat equals 17. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, we just did a loan, 3.1% interest rate.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Can you imagine 30?
That's amazing.
30 years.
So, with that being said, the real challenge is going to be human nature, right? When it comes to one of the reasons for any of my realtor friends, I'm concerned for the real estate market. I don't think it's going to crash, but I don't think it's going to appreciate much in the next several years because the way human beings are and behavioral finance dictates, it's like, oh, well, we'll use my experience. So my first mortgage was like $1,500 a month.
Yeah. Right.
Well, that bought me a $150,000 house at the time. Well, $1,500 a month now at a 3% mortgage might buy me a $250,000 house.
Yeah. I
mean, maybe. Right? But my point being, people don't go, oh, well, they still spend the cash flow they can afford. It just bought them bigger houses. So everybody's still maxed out. Everybody's just maxed out at a bigger square foot than they were before.
Yes. Houses have gotten ridiculous.
So now, and we've had an appreciation to go along with that. But now if rates start to go back up, right? If I want to sell my house at X amount of dollars and at a 3% interest, let's just say the mortgage for my home hypothetically is $2,000 a month.
So,
but if in 18 months, its mortgages are at 6%. Well, now people to buy my house might have to afford $2,600 a month or $2,800 a month, and they might not be able to afford that home anymore.
Yeah. So, but here's my question: why should the central bank ever increase interest rates?
Oh, so right, I got completely off topic. Look at you, host. Pull me back. All right. So here's the problem. So when we created artificially low rates, some different things happened. One major thing that happened is corporate borrowing has basically tripled in the last 10 years.
Okay.
Right? Because corporations are like, we can borrow almost if you consider inflation 3%,
yeah,
and you can borrow at 3%, it basically costs you nothing to borrow.
Exactly.
In a practical world. So companies borrow tons of money that's due to be rolled over at some point in time. And most of that was used in buybacks and other types of financial engineering or buying other. It wasn't really, in other words, it wasn't invested in like research and development to create with more efficient, more competitive products and services. It was mostly done. It was mostly, hey, if money's cheap,
yeah,
I'm going to use theirs instead of ours. But that inflates your balance sheet, right? So now companies have a situation where maybe, particularly if they haven't had, if you're Amazon or Apple, no big deal. But if you're a company maybe hasn't had the same growth that you thought you were going to get, now you owe a lot more money, and it's manageable because rates are low. But if rates were to go up at all, now you can't afford your debt, and you've got a significant problem there.
So where they've been borrowing most of this from banks, right?
No, most of it from the bond market.
From the bond market.
From the bond market. But the bond market takes its cues from rates are all kind of loosely related. So the rates when the Fed cuts rates, what they're cutting is the rate that it costs, the rate that they pay on money on deposit And then there's also LIBOR, and LIBOR is a rate that is the London LIBOR, London Interbank Overnight Rate, is a rate the rate banks pay to one another to lend money back and forth over a 24-hour period, kind of like buddies. Hey, can you spot me $20? I'll get you back later, tomorrow, whatever. Except they're doing it with trillions of dollars. Once those things have artificial pressures and manipulation on them, it works itself through the economy that rates across the board have to pay lower and lower. So if you're not really getting anything on deposit at the bank, well, then maybe getting a 3% or 4% yield from a bond, a corporate bond or a municipal bond might be very attractive. Where 5 years ago you might have bought it at 6%.
So let me do dumb man brain. Okay, I got to dumb this down for me to understand.
All right.
So I want to go put my money in a CD.
Mm-hmm.
And they tell me, hey, they base that basically off the interest rate, right? Because they're looking at the banks and going, well, what can we borrow money at, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, so they're willing to offer me 2% in the CD.
Right.
So if I'm a corporation, I have to say if I'm going to sell a bond, I got to do it like a 3%.
Correct.
Because it's a little bit more risky than
Correct.
CD. And so now when all of a sudden you've been selling bonds for this much, and all of a sudden they raise interest rates, and now a CD goes, whoa, we'll give you 5%.
Right. The new bonds are much more expensive for the company to issue.
And so now you have problems.
So the big risk of there's a really what ended up, how about this? One effect of artificially lowering rates through flooding the market with money, and what quantitative easing did is the Federal Reserve bought directly treasuries.
Okay.
And they bought, so let's say you're the federal government.
Okay.
And I represent I and my cohorts all represent different investment banks. And the treasury has auctions. And so these banks come in and they buy treasuries because there's a demand for secure, guaranteed money from the United States government. We're the most secure government in the world.
Yep.
But we might not really want to buy 10-year bonds at 3%. We might not have an appetite unless you give us a little bit higher rate. And so if you want to sell $1 billion worth of bonds and only $500 million worth of bonds are sold on a Tuesday because the rest of us are like, nah, we think we do better down the road. We're not that desperate to lock our money up. And the government wanted to sell it. If that was the end of the equation, it was the people are willing to buy and the government willing to sell, the government would have to, next auction, raise the rates on their bonds so that they could attract enough buyers to sell the bonds they need to fund the government's need. Well, what happened is the central bank, which can
quantitative
money,
easing is when
the central bank bought all the bonds
that's
that
what
the
quantitative
government,
easing
yeah.
is.
And so if the bank was willing to come in and be the low bidder, basically, and so I want to try to get a bond that pays me 3.5%. My buddy wants to get a bond that pays 3.75, and you're the government. You start the bidding out 3%, and the central bank goes, "We'll take it all."
Yeah.
It makes it, you basically have a buyer with a friendly buyer with an unlimited wallet who's willing to finance your debt habit, right? And that and everything's kind of based off of that. So what ends up happening is,
are we still doing that?
I think we stopped doing it about a year and a half ago, but we'll probably start doing it again, or 2 years ago. Well, it'll happen again. We've been unwinding that. They've been selling bonds, which is why rates started to rise. Here's the problem: when corporations could borrow money, virtually in unlimited amounts, on a practical basis through the bond market at very low rates, when rates rise up, globally speaking, on an economic, because that's not just our country that's doing this, right?
Gotcha.
So on a global economy perspective, all of these corporations that have borrowed much more money than they might have otherwise because rates were really low, are going to have the exact same problem that if I came to you and as an individual and you said, "Hey, you know what? You had a variable rate mortgage, and you're 5 years at 3%. I don't think that exists anymore, but let's just say it did. But now you need to refinance your house, Taylor. But unfortunately, now rates are 6%. That's going to have negatively impact you because now your mortgage costs a whole lot more money.
Yeah, because I used to spending a certain amount, like
correct.
A corporation.
And now, just to keep your house, just to maintain your house, you've got to spend a lot more. Whenever rates go up, which will eventually have to happen.
Why does it have to happen?
Well, that's a great question. So interest rates historically cycle on 30 to 40 year time horizons.
Okay.
I mean, I'm talking about over centuries. That's not, I mean, interest rates are eventually affected by the supply and demand and demographics and growth in the marketplace. It's a conversation beyond the scope of probably this podcast, but interest rates have to do with basically how in demand is money as a resource.
Gotcha.
Right? So if things were, for example, if you were the only bank in town and things were booming, and you didn't have any Fed or any other thing, you could say, look, man, I got $1 million to lend and I got 10 people that want to borrow $1 million. I'm lending my $1 million to the people that are willing to pay me the highest interest rate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But if you got nobody to lend to because nobody's willing to take the risk because nobody has the wherewithal to grow, then you would have to really lower your rate to try to incentivize people. Okay. It's why we cut rates when we're going to a recession is you want to make it easier for people to be entrepreneurial, for people to expand, for people to do the job creation things. Yeah. The challenge has been normally rates are cut into a recession, and then the normal economic activity rises rates back to a normal level, and it ebbs and flows. Yes. We haven't seen that, and the problem with that is there's great swaths of the economy that count on desperately rates. And what I mean, so a pension fund. Yes. Okay. Right. Or grandma and grandpa so my father is retired, but he didn't do this. My grandfather, when he retired, he put all his money in the bank. Yeah. And he laddered CDs, and he got paid like an average interest rate of 7 or 8%. Yeah. Well, if you make 7% on CDs, you only need to you have $1 million in the bank, you got $70,000 a year. If you're making 2% on CDs, you need $3.3 million or whatever it is in the bank to make $70,000 a year. Yeah. So it really hurts savers. It hurts insurance companies. It hurts pension funds. It hurts very large institutions that are used to putting their money at work through debt instruments, lending money to the overall economy and getting paid a reasonable rate in return. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking about colleges, universities, healthcare systems, insurance companies, pension systems. There's all kinds of organizations and institutions that depend on a reliable flow of interest. And if interest is artificially depressed, so for example, we have a massive crisis on the horizon, massive. And I think we're going to fix it with printing money and cutting benefits, and it's going to be yuck. But there's a huge pension crisis in America. Okay, yeah. So I want to get to that in just 1 second, but about the crisis and I mean it's massive. Yeah, because basically, so we force this down. Everybody goes, oh, look at the stock market, it's shooting through the roof, but I want to get to this whole. So what is the inverted yield curve? What does that mean? It simply means you are so normally so if I were to tell you, hey, I want to I'm a bank. I want you to put your money with me. And if you put your money, I'm making crazy numbers up. Put your money with me for 6 months, I'll give you 5%. Okay. You put your money with me for 2 years, I'll give you 2%. Which one are you going to do? I'm going to take the 5%. Right? Yeah. So an inverted yield curve is when the short end of the duration pays a higher rate than the long end. Okay. Normal yield curve is the longer you let someone have your money, the more money they have to pay you. Yes. So an inverted yield curve basically means, hey, I'm not willing to tie up money for the long term because I'm very suspect as to what the near-term direction of the economy is. Okay. And so how many times has this happened? Since 1950, you remember how I want to say, and I'm completely spitballing because I was actually going to look this up today before our conversation, but I remember reading at one point. I want people to understand, Jeff is doing this all off the top of his head. He did no research. I did none. I want to say it's happened like 11 times since 1945, or something like that. And I think it's resulted in a recession like 9 of the 11 or something. But I could be way off on that. Yeah. But I do know it's a highly, highly, highly indicative of a coming recession because basically it's telling you that the market at the end of the day is made up of millions and millions of individuals and millions of businesses, institutions, all giving their best guess to what something is worth. And if everybody's kind of saying, I'm willing to put a lot more money on the short term than I am on the long term, that tells you people are concerned about locking their money up now because they're not sure what the environment's going to look like. Gotcha. Right? And so it's an interesting it is a non-normal course of events.
Yeah.
And it would be equivalent to, you have an 800 credit score, I'm going to give you a credit card at 20%. You got a 400 credit score, I'm going to give you a credit card at 0, right? That doesn't make sense. And so it is a canary in the coal mine that at a 100,000 foot level, our economy is not working as it normally does.
And the double problem to this is the fact that they have interest rates never went back up.
Correct.
And so they can't just start cutting interest rates again. Well, they're doing it, but they're getting to the point where you can't do it anymore.
They have a lot. So for example, when the Fed started, and I don't really remember, but like, for example, I remember when a buddy of mine, I want to say it was 2006, got a mortgage at like 6 1/4, 6. And I was like, dude, who did you have to bribe?
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've cut rate. I don't know what the Fed fund rate was before the financial crisis, but let's just call it 4% or 3.5%, whatever it was. Then we cut it all the way down to 0, and then we started to come back. But there's a massive difference between a 6% mortgage and a 4% mortgage.
Yeah.
Not nearly as great a difference between a 4% mortgage and a 3.3% mortgage. In other words, if you can't afford a house at 4%, you probably can't afford the house at 3.5%.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So the concern about the rates having not normalized sooner, which is what the Fed should have done, is probably start in 2000. As soon as we were really out of are people going to run on bank level crisis? So probably 2012, 2013, they probably should have raised a 1/4 point.
You're not supposed to hit the desk, man.
Oh, sorry, a 1/4 point every 6 months or every 9 months, and let it be just kind of a known thing. And if they'd done that, we would have back to normal rates. So they would have. And people are probably back to 5.5% mortgages, 6% mortgages. That would have taken some of the steam out of the market a little bit. It would have taken some of the steam out of the real estate market for sure. But on the flip side, when you cut rates from that point, it's enough of a difference to incentivize people to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, if I don't really shop ever at all, but it's sort of like, I remember when I first got married, my wife loved Kohl's because it was like you could go on a certain days, and it was like, she'd come back and she'd go, I spent $220, but when I left, it was only, $61 because it was an 80% rack that was 40% off the 80%. That was, buy one, get one free. I mean, she just loved that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but you realize I just marked it up 40% and 80%. It's all BS, right?
Yeah.
But she doesn't do that anymore. But my point is the psychology of the rate difference right now is very minimal, and basically everybody that can kind of refinance probably has.
Yeah.
There was a 37% spike last week. I did read that today.
Yeah. Well, no, we're experiencing it in the tile company. Right. We're seeing it.
So if you refinanced 4 or 5 years ago and you're financed at 4.5%, sure, refinance at 3. That's a great move. Yeah. Right. And if you do, win him group title. But in general, I don't think it's enough to make things work. I mean, again, it's sort of like if you had somebody who was struggling with debt, and they came to me and said, I've got all this credit card debt and I can barely make my minimum payments. And I said, well, what's your average rate on your cards? Oh gosh, it's 3%.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice? But it's 3%. Yeah. If I look at the person and go, got great news for you. I got the credit card companies negotiated down. Now you're only paying 2.5%. Doesn't really change the game. Yeah. Because your problem is the minimum payments, right?
Okay. So I want to get to the next part. If everything blows up.
Oh, wait. Are we going to talk about pensions? Because that's a good point for a hot second.
No. We'll stay out of pensions because you could probably go off.
I'm just saying, just one little thing. They literally did a survey. The average pension management company assumes that on their big multi-billion, whether it's the teacher's pension or the steel workers pension or the United Auto Workers pension, they assume an average rate of return for the next decade at about 7% interest a year with no losses after fees, and about 40% of that's invested in bonds, which are paying 3 or 4%, which means you really need the stock market to do 10 or 11% without any hiccups
in order for them to maintain
for them to maintain their projections so they can possibly pay out their obligations. So one recession, one major crash, rates going down lower, and pensions are in a massive world of hurt.
And is this government pensions too?
It's government pensions are just paid for by taxpayers. But no, this is This is state government pensions, absolutely.
Okay.
Police pensions, fire pensions, teachers' pensions, all of them. And what will end up happening is you can't make a promise to people for 30 years and not deliver.
Yeah.
So they will need pensions will be bailed out. I project in the next 10 years there will be a pension bailout.
Okay.
The way we had the Wall Street bailout in 2008, and it will be orders of magnitude more money.
Yeah, I read since Trump's been president, I think the deficit's increased 27%.
That seems reasonable.
And I mean, we're not even 4 years in.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
Almost 30%.
Well, the tax cut didn't help at all.
Yeah, well, yeah, you have the tax, but you have all the other things. They just keep spending money. It's
Right.
like now it kind of appears. I mean, that's the whole argument with everybody that's running for president right now. Is like, I'll start this program. We don't have to pay for it.
Right, it's monopoly money, right?
Yeah.
And that works until it doesn't, and it may, and who knows how long it'll work, right? I mean, but there is a point at which I think that has a terminal end, and that's either people either devalue your money.
So if the government starts printing money, is the best thing to do is own assets, right?
Yeah, I mean, inflation, people really worry about inflation. Right now, inflation isn't a huge worry. Deflation's a bigger concern because of what's actually happening. Because there's some things get more expensive, right? Your stock prices get more expensive, your house, but other things like, how much you spend on your TV. Remember, I don't know how much that TV costs, but I bought a TV 10 years ago for $1,800. It's 50 inches. I bought a 50-inch TV a year ago for $300. So,
I know, it's unbelievable.
and a lot of things you actually have deflation, right? So, what people need to be prepared for is they need to minimize the required cash flow, right? At the end of the day, you want to be I tell people, like, financial stability is when your income matches your outgo plus $1, right? I mean, that's not super stable. And then financial security is when you have breathing room, right? Whether that's 6 months in savings, or you got where if something happens to your job, maybe there's a health challenge, whatever, you've got options. You're not immediately against a wall at the end of the next 2-week pay cycle.
Yeah.
Right? And then financial freedom is where it doesn't matter if a paycheck ever comes in again from trading your effort and energy and time for dollars, right?
You've saved enough. Because
you've saved enough to you replace man at work with money at work or assets at work. Now it's very difficult to do, right? But it also depends on the lifestyle you lead and other things you're doing. But I think a diversified, you want to have assets. You don't want to just have assets that are necessarily paper assets, right?
Okay.
You want to have different kinds. A stock is only worth what you can sell it for the day you want to sell it for, right? So during the financial crisis, for example, GE hit $9 a share. Maybe it was 7 even. I think it was 9. Either way.
I think it's 7 right now.
It was at, but it was at 50 the 2 years before.
Yeah. Bad example, Jeff.
That is a bad example. But my point is, though, at that time, because GE since then has had a lot of struggles, but at that time, that was not a reflection of GE. That was a reflection of everybody was exiting at the same time from the market, and there was no buyers. There was all sellers.
Well, and I've been playing this game for a long time, because I would say for the last 4 years, I've been expecting every year to be a big downturn.
Sure.
To blow up, and it just keeps going up and up. And so they always say you don't sit on the sidelines because you can't guess what the future is going to be.
That's true. Well, that's what they say.
But, okay, so let's say you're a dude holding a bunch of cash because you think it's all going to blow up. Would you say stay on the sideline right now?
Well, it depends. That's a really complex question, right? Because what's his time horizon? What's his goal for that cash?
Yeah.
What's going to make him happy? Making 2% or making 20%? I think
let's just do you. Let's not say you're going to buy someone else.
Okay, if it's me, I absolutely have no problem. But I'm much more conservative than most people.
Okay.
Because I started my career in 1999, and I've lived through 2 of the 4 worst bear markets of all time.
Yeah.
Well, the last 150 years. As a financial advisor. So not only have I seen any effect it had on my own finances, which was double because it was affecting my income.
Yeah.
And it was an effect on any assets I had. But I also saw it through the eyes of all my clients.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very aware of what a rough patch in the economy, particularly when it hits the financial markets, can do to people emotionally, not just to their balance sheets, right?
Gotcha.
So I will tell people, I think cash is king for a reason. It's a famous saying, and it should be. If you're going to invest, so I just told this somebody the other day. We're having a conversation about, I really like this stock at this price. And I said, do you like the stock at 50% below? And he said, well, what do you mean? I'm like, if you buy this stock and we go to, Iran and, the China and U.S. tariff thing hits another level of crisis.
Yeah.
And we go to war with Iran and it all hits the fan and that stock's trading for 50 cents on the dollar from what you bought it for. Are you going to bail somewhere between here and here, or are you in it for the long haul? If the answer is you want to own this thing for 10 or 20 years, sure, buy today, especially if it pays dividends. Don't worry about it. Lock it away, forget about it. As long as you understand the company and you have confidence. So I'm not, I don't necessarily think, I'm not recommending Apple as a buy. I haven't looked into their stock in particular. But I'm highly, highly, highly confident Apple's not going out of business in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
It might not be worth what it's worth now because eventually people might move on from the iPhones.
Yes.
So if you really are an Apple fan and you like that, sure, make that bet. But there's a lot of companies that people own just because they're trying to own equities or stocks in general, and they're not going to hold on for the ride.
So you're right. The play is more for dividends.
I think it's a much at this point in a mature. I think you're much better off buying dividend yielding, counter cyclical investments. Which means, for example, in a recession, utilities are usually considered historically a safe haven because they pay decent dividends, and people are going to use electricity regardless of what the economy's doing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right, but people might not go whereas a luxury brand stock, right? I can't think of a single one, right? Rolex, I don't know if that's an independent company anymore, but if it were, that's probably not a great buy at what we might be likely to think is the tail end of a 10-year expansion.
So right now, if you had a choice, pay off your mortgage or invest in stocks, what would you do?
What's my mortgage rate?
3%. It's 4%. Let's say it's 4%.
So I pay off my mortgage.
Okay.
And I'm a financial advisor. I get paid for people to invest stocks. I pay off my mortgage. Here's why. For you to pay, so I'm going to use really simple math. Let's say that you're, because one of the challenges is people look at the cost of their home only based on interest rates. Oh, I'm borrowing at 4% or 3%. So let's just say in a completely perfect world, somebody lives in some kind of bubble where they're guaranteed a job for 30 years and they start their mortgage. 30 years later, they paid it off.
Okay.
And they might look and say, okay, well, Jeff, in year one, my mortgage is $2,000 and I'm paying $1,300 in interest, but $800 of what I'm paying year one is going straight to principal.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's actually way, way, way more be going to interest than principal.
Yeah.
But let's just say that's what they're looking at right now. But as I get further in the road, maybe in year 10 or maybe in year 20, Jeff, maybe $1,300 is going to principal and $600 or $800 is going to interest. And by year 25, it's almost all going to principal. So it kind of depends on where you're at. But people can make the argument when you look at a mortgage, they can say, look, yes, it costs me $2,000 a month in cash flow, but really some of that's going into an asset that I own.
Yeah.
And so my cost is really just the interest cost to carry the loan.
Yes.
And that's true. Except if you lose your job, you can't go to the bank and go, well, just don't charge me till I get a job because after all, a lot of this is an asset and that doesn't work. And so what I look at it is what I think of more for the vast majority of people, a better way to look at their mortgage to say, okay, what do I have to make to pay my mortgage? Particularly because with the new tax rules, a lot less people are itemizing, so they're not actually getting the benefit of writing off their mortgage to begin with. So if you're an average American working family, so the median family of four makes like $54,000 a year, right?
Okay.
The reality is sort of kind of the area we live in. It's a more upper middle class area and beyond, right? So it's probably higher than that here. Matter of fact, I know it is. But let's just say, let's say you got a family with making $100,000 a year.
Okay.
Well, if they're making $100,000 a year gross, after their self-employment tax, after FICA tax, right? So Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, they're down to about 92.
Okay.
Right? And then they're going to take out some benefits and some other things. And then they're going to take out their tax rate, right? Or their effective tax rate's going to be taken out by the pay. So they might bring home 70 of the 100.
Yes.
Right? So their effective between benefits, income taxes, and Social Security taxes, Medicare taxes, their effective rate's 30%. Okay. Right? And people kind of forget about that because you can't really get rid of employment tax. It is what it is until you max out. But so what that really means is, okay, you're bringing home $2 roughly for every $3 you make, you get to keep $2.
Yeah.
So if you have a $2,000 mortgage, you have to make $3,000 a month to net $2,000.
Yeah.
To pay your mortgage, right?
Yes, exactly.
So if you want to replace your mortgage, you need to make, if we're talking about an investment that threw off income every single year, you need to make about $3,000 a month. Now, investments don't have Social Security wages and so on and so forth, so I'm getting a little complicated here. But let's just say it's all equal tax-wise.
Yeah.
Okay, well, your mortgage is guaranteed.
Yeah.
You know what your rate is, and they're going to charge it to you on the first.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what happens in the market. I mean, assuming that Armageddon doesn't happen, that's coming, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So would you say that to compare the value of paying off your house and having a guaranteed benefit of $3,000 a month? In other words, you don't have to make $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
If your mortgage is paid off in this hypothetical scenario.
Yeah. Okay.
So a dad might come home, or a mom might come home, or a couple might come home and say, you know what? We're tired of our jobs. We paid off our house, but our dreams are to be, you're gonna start a painting studio, and I'm gonna be a teacher, and we're both quitting our corporate jobs in America, but we only need to make $70,000 total because we paid off our house.
Yeah.
And that makes up that extra $30,000. So there's a significant value there, right? If you really want to compare apples to apples, and this is where people make in my opinion, a pseudo-analytical decision, and many financial advisors guilty of this. They'll say, well, Taylor, you can refinance your house at 3.1%, and you can invest, and the market average has been, 9% for the last 50 years or 100 years, and that's a 6% spread. Well, wait a minute. You can invest at 3.1%, but you can potentially write off that interest. So actually maybe your cost is a little bit lower, and they're going to add that in as their argument.
Yeah.
But just because the market averages a return, that return's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
You might, because if you made that same argument to somebody in 2006, by 2008 they're down 50, or by 2009 they're down 50% in their investment, right? They could have paid their house off.
Yeah.
And instead they have half as much money. That's not a good idea.
Yeah.
In that scenario. So here is the analysis. What do you really have to make it worthwhile? Well, I will tell people the first thing you do is compare it to a guaranteed investment. Because if I pay off my mortgage, or rather if a client pays off their mortgage, I can look them in the eye and guarantee them they will have X amount more in the bank every month because they didn't have to pay the mortgage.
Yes.
So the equivalent is, how much do we have to invest in a guaranteed instrument to give you that exact same amount of money in the bank to pay the mortgage?
Yeah.
Well, if your mortgage is $2,000 a month and you got to pay taxes on your investments, right?
Yep.
And you're going to pay ordinary income taxes on short-term investments that give you cash flow.
Okay.
You might pay long-term on dividends. Best case scenario, if you're paying 20% in taxes, you need to make $2,500 a month to net $2,000.
Yes.
$2,500 a month is $30,000 a year. $30,000 a year in a guaranteed investment account, you can get 3% and you can probably get about 3.5% guaranteed by portfolio municipal bonds right now. Now, granted, you get some tax benefits there.
Okay.
But let's say it was a portfolio of regular bonds. So you probably get a 4% bond portfolio.
Okay.
So you need roughly $750,000 invested to earn enough money to give you your money to pay your mortgage and keep that money just stay in the same level.
Yeah, and this is something I
So if I can pay off my house at $300,000 versus putting $750,000 to work to tread water.
Yeah.
Or here's the other question. Well, Jeff, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna invest my money with Taylor. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna invest my money with Jeff Reddick, and I'm gonna make 9%. Let's just say I do. Okay, well, you're gonna pay me a fee.
Okay.
So there's some haircut there. Let's call it 1. So now your 9% is 8%. And of course, we probably had to be somewhat creative to make that money. We probably take more risk, but let's just assume we were right and we bought and sold things.
Yeah.
So now you're going to pay ordinary income tax on that, or short-term capital gains tax on that.
Okay.
So your 8% is more like 5%.
Yeah.
Or you could have paid your mortgage off that cost you 4. You jump through all those hoops to make 5.
Yep.
That doesn't really make sense to me.
No, and I tell people this all the time. Everything that you buy in actual work effort costs you really 30% more. Because how much time, like you go, okay, this truck, I'm going to buy. It's going to cost me $50,000. Yeah. Oh man, I could buy it. Well, then immediately you have to add 8.5% on that because there's a sales tax to it here in Texas, and then you're not paying for it right there. You're going to finance it, so you got to add in your taxes too that you have to earn in order to pay that thing. Everything costs you so much more, and people always tell me, I make so much more than I used to, but I feel so poor. I don't feel like I'm getting ahead. Well, it's because taxes are your biggest drag in your life.
Well, and lifestyle creep.
Yeah.
Because financing lets you live a better lifestyle, materialistically speaking. Materialistic, is that a word? Materially speaking.
Yeah.
Than we all would be able to live, most of us, if we just paid in cash. And so you get stuck in this cycle.
Vicious cycle. Well, Jeff, we're going to end right here because we got to get on with our lives. But it's been great, though. So this is Jeff Reddick. And if you ever have a financial question, please don't call him on his cell phone because he's going to complain about it. But
I will.
You can call him at his work, and he might call you back if you have a lot of money.
I might.
All right.
See.
Window there.